In this video, I provide comments on the 1.75 trillion Build Back Better plan passed by the US House of Representatives but stalled in the US Senate. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjeet Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. The Biden Build Back Better plan, also called the Social Policy and Climate Change Bill, was passed by the House on November 19, 2021, but is stalled in the Senate mainly due to West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin's resistance to the spending and Arizona Senator Kristen Sinema's resistance to tax increases. According to an article in the Time magazine, the plan calls for the following spending items: $555 billion on climate change, $400 billion on universal pre-K, $200 billion for child tax credits, $200 billion for 4 weeks of paid family and medical leave, $165 billion on healthcare spending, $150 billion to expand affordable home care, and $150 billion for affordable housing. In my video of November 11, 2021, titled "It's Time to Remove Brahmanism Out of the US Economy by Reforming the Tax Code," I explained that climate change is real and all nations must do their best to fight it. Therefore, I am in favor of spending the $555 billion in the bill on climate change. In this video, I will offer my comments on the spending on universal pre-K, child tax credits, 4 weeks of paid family and medical leave, and affordable housing. That is in this video and follow-up videos. Before I offer my views on specific spending categories, I would like to state that I am not in favor of expenditures that will continue to increase the deficit further. Neither am I in favor of settling on the amount the government wants to spend and then just taxing the rich higher and higher to pay for it. It will lead to aggressive tax avoidance and lying on taxes. However, as indicated in my November 11, 2021 video, I believe large amounts of tax increases can be raised by taxing the super rich, specifically by taxing unrealized gains. In this video, I had offered the following preliminary suggestions on the changes to be made on the tax code. Number one, the tax loophole of taxing annual increase in wealth only when it is realized through sale of assets should be done away with. Unrealized capital gains should be taxed at say 23%, with perhaps exemption during first 5 years of operations for a new business. My new comment is that unrealized capital gains should be taxed at a minimum of 23%, but slowly moving towards taxing as ordinary income. An important question to answer is, why should unrealized capital gains be taxed? The answer simply is that the basis for taxing income is the biblical principle of taxing the increase as stated in Deuteronomy 14 verses 22 to 23. You shall truly tithe all the increase of your grain that the field produces year by year, and you shall eat before the Lord your God in the place where he chooses to make his name abide. The tithe of your grain and your new wine and your oil, of the firstborn of your herds and your flocks, that you may learn to fear the Lord your God always. So, unrealized capital gains are an increase which a taxpayer has chosen not to convert into money in the year and has chosen to keep it invested instead. Nevertheless, it is the easiest possible increase as an investor realizes. It's much easier than working for wages or salary or earning income annually in a business. There is absolutely no good reason to give this increase any special treatment. Only wealthy taxpayers realize most of the benefit of this loophole, which enables them to get away without paying much taxes throughout their life on the increase. It just further increases their wealth. Number two, realized capital gains should be taxed as ordinary income. This means that realized capital gains should not be taxed at lower rates. or at least the realized capital gains rate should be increased from the current 23.8% to eventually be taxed as ordinary income. The reason is that only the super rich are the main beneficiaries of this tax. The current lower rate may be maintained for individuals with lower net worths of say 50 to $100 million or lower. Now, my new comment is that to encourage saving for retirement, the current lower rate should be maintained only for those earning income below 1 million annually, which is 99.9% of Americans, and net worth should not be a criterion. Number three, in order to apply the taxes fairly, those private businesses with annual revenues of say $50 million must sell 10% of the value of the business in stock to the public so that the corporation can be fairly valued by the market. That will enable fair calculation of the realized and unrealized capital gains to minimize the possibility of private firms escaping fair taxes. Number four, in emergencies or dire need for investment, a wealth tax of say 1 to 3% could be imposed for limited duration, such as 2 to 10 years, on billionaires. Such wealth tax will perhaps apply once or twice in the life of a taxpayer. Corporations should be taxed at 23%, with 20% for government expenditures and 3% for the government to bail out corporations that need bailing out, as well as investments in targeted sectors. Of course, this will depend on whether international agreement can be reached on increasing the minimum corporate rate from 15% to 23%. Number six, stock buyback should be taxed at 2 to 5%. My preference would be for the higher rate, as buybacks are made with cash which the corporation thinks it cannot profitably reinvest otherwise, or merely to benefit the corporate officers. At present, the maximum individual tax rate is 37%. Though I do not have the data or the capability to analyze the impact of these suggestions, my hunch is that if my suggestions are implemented, the top individual tax rate would fall to perhaps below 30%, or at least below 33%, or it may go down as low as 23%. More individuals at the lower end of income will qualify for paying no federal or state income taxes due to 3% of taxes being applied towards welfare. These changes in the tax code will result in the wealthiest individuals paying their fair share of taxes, whereas the middle class will pay lower taxes. Now we can address the specific items in the Biden's Build Back Better plan. First, the universal pre-K expenditures. The BBB plan proposes funding for universal preschool for 3 to 4-year-olds. As of 2019, nearly half of 3-year-olds and one-third of 4-year-olds were not enrolled in preschool in the United States. Here is what recent studies show about the results of investment in preschool education. A May 2021 large-scale study of 4-year-olds in the Boston school system, called the BCS study, by economists Guthrie Gray-Loeb, Parag Pathak, and Christopher Walters, they showed significant impact on their lives due to being enrolled in preschool. These gains were made with only 1 year of preschool, and in some cases only for half a day. The BBB funds preschool for 2 years for 6 years, 6 hours a day. Therefore, better outcomes than even the Boston school study should be expected as a result. When the kids in the Boston school study grew up, one, their graduation rates from high school were higher than those who did not attend preschool, 70% versus 64%. They were more likely to take the SAT test, 9% higher, and also coming with a scoring with a higher probability above the bottom quartile and in the top quartile. Number three, those enrolled in preschool also attended college at a higher percentage, 54% compared to 42% of those who did not have the benefit of preschool. These effects were greater for boys than girls but did not differ by race or income. However, consistent with other research, attendance in preschool did not improve performance in standardized tests. The greatest benefit of preschool were realized in development of non-cognitive skills in the kids such as emotional and social skills, a respect for rules which enables them to avoid disciplinary problems later in school as well as in adult life. Some of the behavioral benefits of acquiring non-cognitive skills for those who attended preschool included A. They were less likely to be suspended from school and less likely to skip class. B. They were less likely to get in trouble and be placed in a juvenile detention facility while in high school. Number 3. They are less likely to become teen parents, 50% lower pregnancies. Number D. They are less likely to commit criminal acts and get arrested, 46% less likely to have severed, served time in jail or prison, and 33% less likely to have been arrested for violent crimes. Then E, they were 26% less likely to have received welfare benefits, that's food stamps and cash, etc. So, the benefits of preschool seem to be that the experience teaches them discipline, self control, and motivates them to make something of their lives. This is reflected in the outcomes in their lives as adults, as stated. Number 5. Those who did not go to preschool are unemployed about 20% more time than those who did go through preschool. Number 6. Those who went to preschool earned significantly more. Number 7. Those who went to preschool were healthier than those who didn't. It improved health and healthy behaviors. Number 8. Those who went to preschool show evidence of improved executive functioning, meaning deal with more difficult situations and show greater discrimination ability. G. Those who went to preschool reported improved child home improvement environment and attachments to parents, which likely played a role in a reduction in criminal activity in later years. Number 10. Nobel Prize winning economist James Heckman and his team determined the monetary benefits of having been in preschool as compared to those who didn't. They estimated that a dollar invested in kids realized a return on investment of 7 to 10% per year due to increased earnings for the kids and savings in public expenditures and large costs of criminal justice or crime victims, health system costs, and other social programs as they grew older. Heckman and his team also studied data from experimental programs in North Carolina that provided quality child care centers for kids aged 0 to 5 years. The centers provided quality education, medical checkups, and nutrition food. They determined that the annual return on investment in these programs was 13%. Heckman and his team concluded that the earlier the children's lives the government invests to provide education, the more beneficial it is in the long run as compared to spending on education of children in high school, college, or adult programs such as job training. Number 11. The siblings as well as children of those who attended preschool also verified from participation in preschool programs. Number 12. Another study, the Casio study, which came out on August 7, 2020, compared the benefits derived from universal preschool programs against the benefits of state-funded targeted means tested meaning for poor families programs programs and determined that the benefits from universal programs are greater in terms of better test scores, especially for the children from poor families. Number 13. And of course, preschool programs increase participation of mothers in the labor force. Now, to get a better understanding of the BB plan and framework, I read the studies cited on the White House website, results of which have been discussed. I also wanted to explore any evidence against universal pre-K programs. I looked at two papers for that purpose. One was an issue brief by the Manhattan Institute the MI paper titled The Drawbacks of Universal Pre-K, a Review of the Evidence by Max Eden, November 10, 2021. Second was an article by Peter Gray, PhD, titled The Case Against Universal Pre-K and related blog articles. Their main arguments against universal pre-K are: number one, Peter Gray's main argument against universal pre-K is that academic type curriculum in preschool results in higher academic scores initially, but the benefits fade by third grade. But that result has been demonstrated by even the BSS preschool study and the Casio study. However, the behavioral benefits are long lasting and benefit society and provide a 3 to 7% return on investment. That is an argument in favor of universal prehood. Gray states, what kids need is love, kindness, care, and opportunity to be more joyful, curious, creative selves. A place for this might be called a child care center, or better yet, a play center. Please let's drop the word school or any other such term that implies a curriculum in relation to little children. Children are designated to learn in their own ways in play. Every attempt to shape them to allow curriculum is harmful. This is not an argument against universal preschool. It is an argument for designing age appropriate learning activities, which could be termed academic curriculum. The BBB plan already states that as a requirement of the program. Certainly, the program performance will be constantly monitored and studies conducted for continuous improvement. In his blog, Gray is merely pointing out the pitfalls to be avoided in designing programs and not providing valid arguments against universal pre-K. Number two, instead of instruction curriculum, Gray advises that children should be allowed to enjoy childhood and pre-K with play and learn that way. He quotes many kindergarten teachers who are against following an academic type of curriculum. Any researcher with an agenda can find thousands of teachers out of millions nationwide to provide anecdotal evidence to support their position to mislead decision makers. Now, Eden's arguments against universal pre-K are: number one, center-based childcare and publicly provided pre-K as currently configured and as would be expanded through large-scale federal investment under BBB plan do not resemble the programs that were studied and showed beneficial results. The programs that were studied and yielded strong benefits were single-site programs with a small number of participants, well-funded and highly trained staff serving deeply disadvantaged students. This is a weak argument. BBB funds the program very well, which would enable the hiring of qualified teachers and develop quality programs. In the BSS preschool study, about 4,000 4-year-olds participated, a large-scale study, and the long-term behavioral outcomes for disadvantaged students were very positive. The Casio study compared universal preschool programs, including both disadvantaged and non-disadvantaged preschool students, with mean tested programs, meaning only for disadvantaged students, and found that universal preschool programs performed better than preschool programs only for disadvantaged populations. Eden could not only have incorporated the results of the BSS preschool study, as that paper was published in May 2021. However, the author could have incorporated and discussed the results of the Casio study, but chose not to because they refuted his position. Number four, in support of his position, Eden cites child care, Head Start program, and pre-K studies. Child care is not the issue in universal pre-K. It is parents' choice to work or to not work during when children are playing, when children are young. Even the child care studies show that disadvantaged children benefit from good quality child care. However, children of two-parent households suffer somewhat and have slightly negative outcomes. Nobody disputes the fact that a child will do better with full-time attention of a well-educated and loving parents staying at home to look after and educate the child. However, many families do not have a choice but for both parents to work to provide a decent standard for the family and must have good quality child care as an option. The BBB plan invests in improving the quality of childcare to improve the outcomes. Now, Eden, in support of his position, cites several international childcare studies that show some negative effects of childcare, as already discussed. However, when he cited a German study, it immediately raised a red flag in my mind. We know Germans lie to the maximum extent they can to harm other nations that they consider their enemies in their bid for world domination. That includes America, British Commonwealth nations, France, and Asia. When the author cited a German study to support his position against universal pre K, I looked closely at the other research cited in support of the position. Sure enough, I discovered the subtle deception. Studies on the effects of Head Start programs have found positive outcomes for children and families. After citing studies that show positive outcomes, even then, Eden then cites a later paper by a student of the researcher Deming, uh, who had showed positive effects of the Head Start program in his research. Now, so Eden then cites a later papers by the student of the professor Deming, which showed negative outcomes. Eden then concluded that the positive effects showed by earlier preschool program studies in the 60s and 70s were no longer valid when performed on data in the 80s and 90s. I simply don't trust the results of this study, which may have been rigged, because the BSS preschool study found very positive behavioral outcomes for data from students who entered preschool in later years than the research cited by Eden. Now, decades of experience with the Head Start program has shown what works based on disadvantaged families, usually headed by single mothers. Besides early childhood education, parent involvement in the program is the key to the form of social services by Head Start social workers to parents in helping solve crisis. Health and mental health services for the family and nutrition for the children. Full day programs also enable parents to obtain employment, which improves the home environment for the children, contributing to positive outcomes. Eden cited three pre K studies in his brief. Two showed generally positive results, and one, the Tennessee PVK, showed negative results. Gray also cited the negative outcomes of the Tennessee PPK study to argue against universal pre K. Both auditors used the studies inappropriately to reach their conclusions. First of all three studies followed up with the pre K students only till 5th, 2nd, and 3rd grade, respectively. The BSS study and others have already shown that the real benefits of the pre K are not necessarily in school performance but are behavioral experts, which lead to long term, highly positive outcomes and provide a good return on investment. Therefore, good studies should not have been used by Eden and Gray in support of their position. It will take more than a decade to collect relevant information data to learn of the long term behavioral benefits of pre K in these studies. Eden, however, did cite a follow up study that showed that positive effects of pre K persist at least till 3rd grade, contrary to the Tennessee VPK study. In the words of the researchers, neither exposure to highly effective teachers or attending a high quality school was sufficient by itself to explain differences in achievement between PARK K participants and non participants in 3rd grade. However, this study found evidence that having both was associated with a sustained advantage for pre K participants in both MAN and ELA, that is, English Language Arts exams that lasted through at least 3rd grade. Notably, however, Few children were exposed to the high quality uh, learning environment after pre K, suggesting that maximizing the pre K investments may require attending to the quality of learning objectives during Park K and beyond. Two of the researchers in the Tennessee PV case study, Lipsy and Ferran, participated in the VK follow up study. In the discussion on the Tennessee VP case study, they had already stated that the program quality may have been a factor in some of the negative results. The other likely factor could be that kindergarten teachers provided a relatively undifferentiated instruction that covered hills many of the pre K children had already mastered. As a result, the pre K children may have lost interest in kindergarten because their instructional experience did not maintain momentum, leading to lower performance as well as some behavioral issues because they lost interest. So, the results so far show the need for pre K to be aligned with kindergarten and beyond, which universal pre K would automatically do because all students will go to the next grade after having acquired similar skills. Even without considering the positive outcomes from the VPK follow up study, makes his dubious suggestion that universal pre K will be long lasting when the children were studied only up to third grade to all children, including disadvantaged children. Attempt to deceive by Eden and Gray and the researchers they cite goes even further. To lend scientific veneer to their position, they cite studies that measure the levels of cortisol in children, a stress hormone which at prolonged high levels can damage the brain. Gray cites a study titled Children's Hair Cortisol, a Biomarker of Stress at School, a follow up study by Grunwald et al., dated February 3, 2020, that showed higher stress levels in children 2 months after they started attending kindergarten. A previous study with the same lead author examined their cortisol concentrations in human when first entering elementary school at 4 years. In the follow up study, the authors examined their HCC when they entered third grade at 6 years, where the more playful first grades proceeded into a formal learning setting. In the follow up study, children showed a significant increase in cortisol levels when they entered third grade. This increase was not associated with severe fearfulness or academic achievement, but did show significant assertions with inhibitory control, that is, behavioral inhibition, etc., the ability to regulate and control universal impulses. Children with less inhibitory control had higher cortisol levels after entering third grade and larger increases in cortisol than children with higher scores on inhibitory control. This suggests that the ability to inhibit or cortisol impulsive arrestivity is important for China's stress regulation when making the transition to more formal education. In both studies, the authors found higher HCCs, which are the cortisol concentrations. There is no earth shaking revelation here. A new environment is certain to cause stress in young children, and all children are different in any group. There are bound to be children who lack self control and will experience greater stress in new environments which require disciplined behavior. They need intervention to help make their transition easier, but that cannot be used as a reaction to prohibit all students from enrolling in pre K so that they don't experience the stress of a new environment in preschool. Now, Eden cites several cortisol studies. The only one that showed that 40% children experience cortisol levels that indicated a stress response was a high family based childcare setting. In pre K, as envisaged by the Biden Build Back Better plan, family should be based childcare should only be a very small part. The authors also note that observations at daycare revealed that intrusive, over controlling state was associated with the cortisol rise. This is useful information to structure preschool programs that avoid intrusive, over controlling care and similar problems, but using such results to argue against universal preschool is unwarranted. This type of cortisol research is biological, cunning, crafty, pseudoscientific research at its best. Now, a new environment is bound to cause some stress for children. Eventually, they would be expected to cope with the new environment. It is true also that for adults, that a new environment will come from a stress. It seems these PhDs and researchers have not heard the expression no pains or no gains and no stress. Then conspiracy against education. There has been at least a 5 decade long conspiracy by German mass creators to dumb down America by degrading the education system. In most countries, including India, primary in most countries, including India, primary elementary school education begins at age 5. But in America, it begins at age 6 because educators in America want children to enjoy their childhood because they know very well that late start with slow earnings because much childhood learning takes place in the earliest childhood years. No Indians feel deprived of childhood when they start school at age 5. I have first hand experience with the conspiracy to degrade education at all levels in America. I came to the United States in 1981 to pursue a PhD in marketing. I was given a full scholarship by 3 universities. Why? Because hardly any Americans wanted to pursue a PhD in business because after slogging for 5 more years in the program and successfully receiving a PhD, the person could look forward to becoming an assistant professor at an annual salary of 36,000. A Northwestern University where I was pursuing my PhD, there was no reason for MBA students to pursue a PhD and spend 5 more years of their lives without earning when they received starting salaries between 45,000 to 120,000 per year after their MBA. Therefore, good students had no incentive to pursue a PhD and become professors instead. So America had to provide. Scholarships for Indians and others to obtain a PhD and become professors. Of course, all that changed when the conspiracy was discovered in the mid 1990s and professors began to be paid 6 figure salaries. It is high time now to bust the conspiracy in child education and start the children off with a solid foundation in preschool. Therefore, I fully endorse the BBB plan for investment in pre K for 3 and 4 year olds. Now, I found the effects of preschool on school performance faded after third year or so quite troublesome. Perhaps the fault lies in understanding what students who perform well academically do. I will share my views on how to perform well in school in another video, but based on the discussion of pre-K studies, I would like to make the following suggestions concerning the BBB funding plan for pre-K for 3 and 4 year olds. Number 1, the Biden plan should be implemented immediately without any reservations. Number 2, the feasibility of starting grade 1 and through 5 should be seriously studied. It will provide an additional year of productive earning life for couple. I am assuming that students already advanced, that is gifted, are being placed in a higher grade. But if most students are prepared so that most students start at age 1 or to age 5, it would benefit the education India kids start Google 1 to at Google 5. None of them feel they missed out on childhood. I assume they are already or should be a part of age appropriate curriculum in Vikram and even elementary school. Number 3. It, if not already a part, basic life skills courses should be part of the curriculum in high school for all students. At least a basic course on health and nutrition, including human anatomy, should be included. Now, a very basic understanding of money and finance should be taught. Many high school graduates, after they start earning, don't know where their money goes. They simply don't understand how to spend wisely and may experience chronic chronic money problems, even though they may be earning enough. A course teaching how to journal expenses and then post them into accounts to get an idea about which expense category the account is spent during the month or quarter or year, and a basic idea about current and long term assets and liabilities. And then how an income and increase, an expense statement, and a balance sheet as are reconciled. Bank reconciliation and household budgeting should be part of the curriculum. It is same in the same or a separate house. Basic understanding of investment and return on investment, time value of money, should be taught so that all students understand the value of postponing the pleasure of spending right now versus saving and investing to be able to spend later in retirement and provide for the children. Consequently, many understand these concepts, but the goal should be that all students should acquire this basic knowledge. This could be explained with the example of Japan, Korea, and Singapore, nations which postponed immediate increase in standard of living and kept investing in the economy, R&D, and are now enjoying the benefits after about 5 decades. A family can also enjoy similar benefits by postponing spending, uh, saving or saving a part of their earnings and investing instead, realizing a return on investment and accumulated earning assets which can then be used for spending later in life. Number 4. All students should be taught the time value of striving to achieve one's goals, but striving lawfully, and how the country as a whole benefits tremendously in increased standard of living, peace and security, and how following the any which way you can philosophy by few individuals forces society to incur huge costs for law enforcement and justice. It sounds simple, but the USA is far from realizing this goal, this round thing. Enough of philosophy for now. My recommendation is that the pre K plan and the BBB plan should be implemented without any reservations. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos and read my articles on important world events, World War II watch, politics, international business, advice on health and behavioral problems, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels, Unmasked Truth with Harmanjeet Saini, to view and get information on the latest videos. Some people do not have the time to go through the full length of videos. They find it more convenient to read the text of videos. Unfortunately, YouTube does not provide the facility to make the text of my videos available on YouTube. But fortunately, Facebook does provide that capability. So I make the text of my messages so faint that I literally have to shout. Now, unfortunately, YouTube does not provide the facility to make the text of my videos available on YouTube. But fortunately, Facebook does provide that facility. So I make the text of my videos available on my Facebook channel, which you can easily copy.